Hi everyone, thanks for joining us. We have with us today Ananya Ivaturi. So Ananya did her undergrad from University of British Columbia. Her major was psychology, and she also did her minor in business. Thanks Ananya, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Great. I think without wasting any time, let's deep dive. So why don't you help us introduce yourself a little bit more, give us more background about your schooling, then college and work as well, since I know you have worked also.
Yeah, for sure. So I studied in NPS my whole life, graduated in 2018, and I took commerce in the 11th and 12th grade. After that, I decided to pursue a degree in psychology and commerce at University of British Columbia, Vancouver. That was a 4-year undergraduate degree here. I continued to stay on in Vancouver to get some work experience. Currently working in the field of HR, so worked in a tech company, and now I'm looking to move to a different industry, so that's happening. And I'm also now preparing for the LSAT because I want to be going to law school here in Canada or the US, depending on where life takes me. But that's a quick summary of how it's going.
Great, perfect. Sounds interesting. So I think psychology, anyways, I think so far at least there's nobody who has come to our podcast who was very clear about psychology. So I think it'll be interesting to understand more about how did you landed up with psychology, and especially I think we are talking about 2018, so about 6 years back almost, right? Now obviously there's a lot more craze about psychology, but I think 6 years back there were very few people who were taking this major, right? So I think it'll be interesting. Just to add to this question, when you entered to the college, did you have this specific major in mind, or was it something else that you changed later on?
I think the goal was always psychology from beforehand. It's honestly very funny story because I never had like formal education in psychology, so that interest came out of quite literally nowhere. But the goal was always to go study psychology, so that's where I applied.
Interesting, great. So since we are anyways talking about the major and we are talking about the interest, walk us through how did you go about selecting this major, right? As a 9th grader, 10th grader, 11th grader, which was that grade when you got this thought saying psych is something that you want to do? And was there certain instances, influences that made you take this call?
Yeah, for sure. So I think my interest started in around 10th grade. And the interest actually started outside the classroom. So it had got nothing to do with what I was studying in school. My interest started with, mental health, getting curious about what that looked like, whether it's for students, for adults. And I had the opportunity to pursue a lot of roles outside, whether it was volunteering or setting up my own organization to explore mental health. So that's what kicked off the initial interest for psychology. I then looked into it more and I realized that what I was studying, while I enjoyed it, I don't think I could pursue it for the rest of my life. So that's when I started to dig deeper into mental health, understand why I like it, what makes me curious about it. So that involved, reading books. I think that's been a big factor, just reading outside of school, picking up books that just interest me and then pursuing that further. And then also talking to people. I think that was a very important piece when navigating what I wanted to study. Talking to people, understanding their experiences, if I were to pursue this degree, where would I end up? And so that sort of paved the way as to pursuing a degree in psychology. So I would definitely say it was not your traditional path, nothing that I was exposed to in school, but something that I sort of just got interested in and continue to look into further.
Got it. And while you are weighing all of this, was there some other major also parallelly that you are trying to figure out, whether it's psychology or something else? And how did you decide between the two then?
Yes, so there was economics that I was thinking of for the longest time. I think that was my favorite subject in school. And I was trying to figure out why, because economics and psychology are very different, but even though they do meet at some points, because you are understanding, like, say, consumer behavior. So trying to look into it a bit more. But then I realized it was the people aspect and understanding the behavioral side of economics, which is why I pivoted eventually to psychology.
Got it. Interesting. And I think I got a fair understanding of why you chose that major. Let's assume you're in college, right? So walk us through how your college life was with relates to the major. How was your overall experience? Was it up to the expectation that you thought you would learn in psychology, or are there further pointers that you thought it would have been better if there were XYZ thing that had been taught to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think college, to summarize, is very difficult because 4 years is a lot. And I learned a lot. I think it was, in fact, one of the best decisions I've made to come here to UBC, especially to study psychology. It's a faculty known for it's psychology and it's research. So studying in a university that specializes in that subject makes it a very, very different experience. So an overview of the degree, initially your first 2 years, you are essentially doing an arts degree. So it's pretty general. You'll be taking courses across the board. So it's not limited to just psychology. You're taking classes in sociology, anthropology, political science, economics. Like, I mean, you can pick and choose. There's so many subjects that are being offered. And so it kind of broadens your perspective, makes you think beyond psychology. I think there were moments where I thought, I'm like, okay, maybe I want to major in something else. Maybe it's not just psychology. So there's lots to learn. There's lots to absorb, whether it's in the classrooms, whether it's outside, getting involved with, student communities and things like that. I think the expectation was, of course, that I would learn a lot. I just didn't think it would be that much. It comes with its own pressures because it's a lot to navigate, especially it's a new subject I've never even touched before. So I didn't really know what to expect going in, but I loved every bit of it. I think it sort of paved the way for me to think very differently, and I'm very, very grateful for that. In terms of what I didn't like or what I wish I wanted more, it's hard to say, honestly, because you could go really any which way in that degree. I had the option of completely switching and moving to a different faculty in my second year, but I don't think there's anything that I would change even if I had to go back. I would probably continue the exact same way I did.
Nice. I think I forgot to ask you that question. So you also have a minor in business, right? So when did you decide to do that?
So the minor is where I actually ended up doing a lot more thinking because it had to be something that was a bit more intentional. I think psych was very clear in the beginning. It's like the first year I knew, okay, this is what I'm going to stick to. The minor was where things got confusing. So initially I was going to minor in sociology, but then I didn't have enough courses in it. And it also wasn't probably adding too much value because psychology and sociology are similar.
Yep.
And I didn't really know where I was going to end up, right? So if I wanted to go into the corporate side of the world, then I'm not so sure if sociology would have helped. So I started to explore my options, and I was actually very fortunate that I ended up taking economics and math in my very first year, which was sort of prerequisites for your commerce minor. And so that sort of just happened, and I think it's a good skill to have. Again, you don't get the option to always study finance or accounting, and those are skills that you'll always use for the rest of your life. So I sort of pivoted and I was like, okay, let me do a commerce minor and see how it goes. And I actually enjoyed it. While some of them I didn't love, I think it was still something that was good to have, especially coming into the corporate world now. Having that knowledge of business with that knowledge of people is very, very powerful.
Got it. Great. And I think post college, it's work life, right? So I'm sure when you spoke about selecting psychology, you spoke about saying that you spoke to people who are currently in industry, working in these fields. What were your career goals that you decided saying, hey, you know what, maybe if I do this, I would land up at this particular place or these particular companies, or I would do this. And how is that progressing right now? Do you see any change happening there? How has the process evolved over the last couple of years on the career goals?
Yeah, I think career goals have changed quite a bit. I think when I started off in my degree, I was very clear I wanted to stay in psychology and continue pursuing that, even professionally. But once I got into it, I started eliminating. So it was sort of like a process of elimination, and that's what helped me sort of decide where to go. And talking to people. So I had the opportunity to talk to students. I had the opportunity to talk to alumni, and I always sort of was very involved in campus. I think that has been a very, very key piece in determining where I end up. And so talking to people, understanding, okay, if I do psychology, where can I go, right? You could go into counseling, you can go into consulting, you can go to HR, you can go into law. So there were different iterations. So every year I would come back and think, okay, maybe I'll try this. But eventually I did settle on law school and HR. And obviously those are completely two different careers. But for the short term, I decided that I wanted to explore HR, get exposure to it, see if this is where I even want to be for the rest of my life. And then in the last couple of years of working, I decided that, no, I don't want to be here for the rest of my life. I want to move towards law. So for now, I'm still in the HR space doing, learning as much as I can. I think they also are linked to the space of law. So it's sort of transitionary in a way. And then eventually going to go to law school. I'm aiming to go in 2026 and then pursuing my degree, and then we'll see how it goes from there.
Nice. Amazing. Great. Now I think let's try and put yourself, in the shoes of a high school student. What advice would you give to a high school student who is currently probably in grade 11 and trying to figure out the right major for them? Do you have a framework or any suggestion that from your journey that you would like to suggest or recommend?
I guess my first thing would be experiment. Do everything. If there is something that you think you like, just try it. Because I don't think you know fully until you're in it. Like I, for example, thought mental health work is where I wanted to be and, be on the social work side of things. I volunteered at organizations, did an internship, spoke to people, then realized, okay, I like the work that I do, but I don't think I can do it for the rest of my life. And the same thing we know when deciding majors as well. Don't limit yourself to the options that are presented to you in school. I think school is obviously a great way to know what you like and dabble in different things, but ask yourself why you like those things, right? If you like accounting, what is it about accounting that you like? Do you like the fact that it's very practical? Do you like the number aspect? And so then that'll help you sort of decide where you end up going. But don't restrict yourself in a box too quick. I think 11th grade, you're too young to know exactly what you want. I think we all went through our own combinations and permutations of what we wanted, and we are not there today. So explore as much as you can, talk to people. It's honestly the best tool. I think networking, I know people stress on this much, much later in your life, but it never hurts to start too early. Like go on LinkedIn, reach out to people. There are always people willing to help and talk to you. And from their career paths, you learn, and that's how you sort of get to explore. And I guess the last thing would be read. That is something I picked up probably a little too late for my own good, but read books. Just keep reading, whether it's a certain genre, whether you don't have to always be the most intellectual thing in the room, but the more you read, the more you realize what sort of information you like absorbing, and that helps you decide academically where you want to go.
All right, great insights. Extending to that, how important do you think it is for a high school student to have a decided major? Is it okay to go and undecided and then probably decide in college? What's your take on it?
I think it's very college dependent.
Okay.
I was very fortunate to go to university that allowed that. That
Hmm.
you could go into the arts faculty, you could be undecided, you do whatever courses you want for the first 2 years, and then you can pivot and say, okay, actually, I don't want to do this at all. But I will say that have some sort of an idea, like, whether it's between two subjects or three subjects, or understand what the similarities are between both, right? So if you're someone who likes psychology but also likes finance, that's very hard to sort of meet in the middle in a degree, especially the undergraduate level. So ask yourself why those things. Do you like the people focused work? Do you like the number focused? So that will sort of help you pivot a bit more. And always your first year of college, again, depending on the university, experiment. Take any random course. I have done courses that I don't think I'll ever do in my life again. I did a visual arts course. I'm not an artist, but it helped me think different. And it helped me, tap into a different side of my creativity, which probably helped me decide something else later on. So undecided is not bad. I think there is a lot of pressure to know everything in the get-go before you go to university, but just be okay with it changing, and make sure that you explore before you settle down on an objective. And again, very, very college dependent. I know there are some colleges that don't offer that kind of flexibility. So if you are someone that's undecided, don't know where to go, try probably going into colleges that allow you to explore. I think that's very, very important.
All right, sounds great. Now obviously, not everything is hunky dory. So are there resources or strategies you think you wish you had known at that point of time and that would have helped you selecting a better major? Is there anything that you would want to talk about?
I would say that networking aspect. I feel like I dived into that pretty late. It would have been nice if I started doing that much earlier. And when I say networking, it doesn't have to really be that professional. I think everyone assumes it's that LinkedIn conversation. I don't mean that. It literally means talking to anyone that you know, right? Like your seniors from school, alumni from a university. There's some random person that you found on the internet that's willing to share their story and talk to you. Absolutely do that. I was very fortunate that I ended up picking the major that I actually really liked, and I continued to stay in it. So I didn't have those issues of, oh God, I think I made a wrong choice. But I know people who have gone through that. Like a lot of my friends went through that. Yeah, so I would say probably the networking aspect and tapping into your network and just looking outside of school. I think there is this I know school is important, board exams and whatnot. I think that's very, very important. Like, of course, don't steer away from that. But try things outside of school. I think that is very, very important.
Yeah, makes so much sense, right? I think sometimes we just hesitate to ask for help, right? And be surprised when you will go and ask for help that people are genuinely very helpful, right? You ask them, and most of them would never say no for a conversation, at least, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just that I think maybe we don't think in that direction, or maybe we just hesitate, what someone else would think, right? I think we'll have to probably stop doing that and start owning it maybe a little bit more. And not just, and especially now when, majors are going beyond what the standard majors used to look like, right? I think a lot more options available and things like that, right? Great. I think sounds good. Now, I think we are towards the later half. So one question, right? I think, yes, I know the answer now after talking to you, but looking back, is there anything that you think you would have done differently in the process of selecting the major? You did talk about networking. So that's obviously one that you probably would have done differently, but is there anything else that you've done differently in the entire process?
I would say to make things easier, not necessarily to make a different choice. Because again, I think at the end of the day, I'm very happy that I took psychology. But to make things easier, I think really understanding what it's like to study at a university level, like studying that subject at a university level is very different. I mean, I did economics in school, I did math in school, but it looks very different when you get to university because teaching styles are different. I mean, the concepts are at the end of the day same, but knowing what that's like in a university setting is important. It's not like school. Especially because I came from a CBSE school, so the education board is completely different, right? So if you go to an IB school, for example, that's probably more like emulative of what college looks like. So I would say study in the way like pick up books that would show you what university courses are like. You have access to Coursera, there are things online, and I think they are actually a very good example of what it means to study those at a university level. Sometimes interest is simply not enough. You also have to prepare yourself for grasping those concepts at a much higher rate because you get one term, like you get 4 months to really do one subject. I mean, that's not how school was. And you do it in a class of like 500 kids, so the teacher may not even know your face or name. So you need to prepare yourself for that. I think that is something that I would have probably done earlier on because it's a very, very steep learning curve when you come from, Indian school to an American education system.
And since you touched upon this important aspect of CBSE versus IB, understand a little bit more insights on it. I'm sure you have seen your friends, colleagues who probably would have done different curriculum. Is there any specific insight that you have received, which you have observed saying probably IB would have been better in terms of X, Y, Z? Anything that you would like to share? Because I think this is one common question that I keep getting, that should we switch our kid to an IB school or an Cambridge school from a CBSE school if we're very sure that we want to go outside, right? So what's your take on it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you are looking to go to an arts degree and you're pretty sure that you're going to stay within the arts degree, an IB degree is far, far more helpful. I will say that. Because one, English, in CBSE and ICSE, the English is, ICSE is still better than CBSE. I feel English in CBSE is not at all comparable to what it's like at university. So it was a struggle to, one, comprehend that level of English, be reading that much, especially as an art student. I mean, I wrote like 12 papers in a term. Like that was unheard of as a CBSE student. So preparing yourself for that, and then also like getting comfortable using the English language to that level, because you're going to be, it's critical arguments, it's theory. You're going to write a thesis at the end of your degree. So there's a certain level at which you need to hone in on your English skills, which I think as a CBSE student can be a struggle. I don't think it's impossible. I did it. A lot of other friends have done it. I don't think it is going to make or break your life if you don't end up doing, going into an IB school. The other thing I would say, however, is when it comes to science and math, I think CBSE has been far more superior in terms of, one, understanding concepts. I didn't particularly enjoy the way math was taught at university. Now, that could be my professor, that could be my specific class, but there's a very different way that they approach it. And somehow I noticed that CBSE students just get it faster and quicker. Your mental math is that much more sharp. You're not using a calculator for every little. So I think that gives you edge. So in science and math class, I think you will fare far, far better if you've come out of a CBSE school. And I would say, yeah, the writing and the English side of things is better to be IB. But I also don't think it's absolutely necessary to switch to IB. I just think if you set that expectation that it's going to be a challenge, and if you're up for it and you are determined, you can do it. I think it's just about working hard. There's no really, it's not rocket science. You don't have to figure out everything in one day. You learn, and that's about it. So I don't think there's either or a better. I think it depends on what you want. Because I know people who've done IB and not fared well, and then regretted that, oh, we shouldn't have switched, right? Because when you're switching at 16 to another school, you are going to be thrown in a different environment. There's other factors you're not considering.
Yeah.
Versus when you're 18 and you've made a very choice decision of going to university, I think you're more mentally prepared for that switch.
Right.
So it's also that the environment, IB schools operate differently, your friends, your company, all that. So I would also consider those factors. I don't think it's like a one-shot thing that if I do IB, I'm going to be successful at university. I don't think those are correlated at all.
Yeah. Do you see any advantage or changes in terms of selection rate for IB versus CBSE versus ICSE or Indian board? Any insights on that?
I will say selection rate, probably not, but I will say access to scholarships and funds are far better if you're an IB student. That specifically happened at UBC with me because I think even if you're a very, very good student, on a CBSE board, it's not internationally recognized. So it's very hard for universities to really understand, okay, were you really just a good student or did you just get lucky? Right? And unfortunately, CBSE as our Indian boards have that reputation of not exactly being very fair and very lenient with their grading. So they do consider the inflation of grades. Whereas IB is very rigorous, it's internationally recognized, it's standard across the board, very easy for universities to understand. So I will say scholarships, in terms of if you're an IB student, you have far, far better access. Not impossible, also university dependent, but from my experience, that's the only thing that I've seen. I don't think acceptance rates really depend if you meet the conditional offers, which most universities have now.
Great. I think final thoughts. Is there anything else that you would like to share with high school students who are aspiring to go outside? It could be US, UK, Canada, any country for that matter. And also any specific insights specific to, let's say, Canada, since you have done your undergraduate.
Yeah, absolutely. I think number one, be prepared to work hard. This is not easy, and do not assume that it's going to be easy because someone else said it would. And it's okay if some things are harder for you than it is for others. I think for me, for example, coming from a CBSE background, like I mentioned, made it very challenging to do an arts degree. So my first year, I had to work probably 10 times harder than the other kids in my class. And you just have to accept it, and that's okay. And you are going to meet people at university that are like scholars at their national level. You're going to meet like people who've gotten awards nationally or internationally recognized, and don't let that deter you. Don't let that make you feel that you are not good enough to be there. There's a reason you got in. There's a reason you can succeed there. So don't get into your head too quickly. I think that's one. And don't let hard work deter you from pursuing what you want. It's simple. It's quite simple. You just have to work hard. Nobody's asking you to build Rome in a day. So I think just being very realistic about what those expectations are, I think. And also college is fun. Like, don't make it to be something that's like, oh my God, 4 years of studying. Like, I don't want to do this. No, it's supposed to be fun. Take classes. You're going to mess up some courses and it's fine. I think in the grand scheme of things, as long as you have a goal, as long as you have a plan, and as long as you're working towards it, I think you'll end up where you're supposed to. And it's fine. I think first year, especially, I would always say, like, do everything that you can think of. Like, I've taken courses in Spanish. I don't speak Spanish. I don't need Spanish. But I just did it because it was fun. And it taught me a lot, it was fun in its own way. And so, yeah, enjoy university. I think that's the whole point of coming here. And it's 4 years of fun. You meet people from across the world and soak it all in. And you're young. And again, you don't have to make all your life decisions in one day. I think we all thought university would look a certain way. We all expected it to be a certain way, and things happen the way that they have to. And then specific to Canada, I will say that the Canadian education system is far more rigorous than most colleges in the US. I don't want to say all, of course, the top like schools in the US, of course, they come with their own rigor. But Canada does have way more stress on academics as compared to the other colleges that I've seen that are more heavy on, like, say, sports or extracurriculars. So just be prepared for that. And just because it's Canada doesn't mean it's easy. Yeah. So I would say just remember that. I think that's important. And again, keeping in mind as to what you want to get out of your degree, right? If I think that's important. If you don't lose sight of that, you'll be fine.
With the recent changes and number of application going down, do you also see any thoughts on that? Any challenges that you see among the Indian community, that are there less students now applying or want to stay back in Canada? Is there any insight that you have?
I would say in terms of applications, I think the demand has gone up. I mean, ever since I came, like I think 2018, there were hardly people from my batch that wanted to go to Canada.
Right.
Ever since then, I've seen a huge influx of people. So clearly there is something that's appealing to the Indian community, and rightfully so. I think, given US's political climate, I understand why people have that. In terms of people staying back, I think that has shifted. I expected a lot more people to stay back, but a lot of the friends that I came here with, always, I think the goal was for them to go back anyway. It might have just accelerated. And also given the current job economy, because it's hard to find jobs after grad, it has forced people to sort of go back home. So there's quite a few people that have left. But I think you have to make what you can of it. And again, if you are doing well, if you get a good grade in your degree, you've shown interest in picking up work experiences, I think you will find a job, you will settle. And immigration always changes. I don't think we expected it to be any different. Canada was way more lenient, I will say, 5 years ago as they are today. But don't let that be something that deters you, right? Because US at one point was so popular. Now today it's probably not as popular, and then tomorrow it'll pick up again. So you just never know how things swing.
Yeah, don't ride those waves, because I think they'll keep coming and keep going, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Ananya. Thanks for your time. I think it was a pleasure talking to you, and I think we did delve into a lot of insights. I'm sure this was quite helpful. Thanks a lot again.
Thank you so much. Thank you.